Hey, thanks for joining us today on UPD. Today we talked about fasting and we went over some of the benefits of that.
Yeah, we looked at the spiritual part of it, how fasting has played its way through the Bible, but we also dug into the physical, healthy benefits of it as well.
Yeah, it was a interesting episode. We really found our way through a complex discussion. It was a great time, so we hope you enjoy the show. Stick around.
Welcome to the UPD Podcast.
Designed to point men towards Jesus.
Real life, real talk. Join us. I'm Andy Lamb.
I'm Jonny Hanson.
This is the UPD Podcast.
Hey friends, thank you so much for joining us here today on Untrained Philosophical Discussionists. My name is Jonny Hanson. This is my good buddy Andy Lamb.
We are the UPD Podcast, and we have come together just to take about our 100 years of life experiences making really poor choices and working now to make better ones. And so our goal is to share our bad choices with you throughout our life, and our hopes of that is that you get to steer around them and make better ones for your life.
Yeah, this week was I don't know that did we announce this last week? I don't know that we did. We did a fast this week. We did a 72-hour fast. We are in the midst of the fast as we speak here. I think we have about 10 hours left, to that effect.
Yep.
And we're here today to kind of talk about that, talk about the biblical values of fasting, and then also we're going to talk about our personal experience with it, and then some health benefits, I think, as well.
Yeah, we also understand, too, for those of you that are Bible people that are going, well, part of fasting is you don't tell people about it. Yeah, we understand that, but we also want to have ability to share with you the discipline of fasting that Christians should have in their lives. And if I knew then what I know now, I wish I would have known a little bit more about experientially what I was going to go through over this last 3 days of fasting. And so kind of the hopes of that too is that we can just give you some insights on like what you're going to experience as you go through it as well, and what you need to be doing while you're fasting. Again, I saw that thing online that said fasting without prayer is just starvation. And so there is a necessity of us to be trying to draw near to God through this as well as we go through this experience. So our desire of sharing with you why we are fasting is to help you maybe take this and become part of your spiritual disciplines as well.
Yeah, it's our intention consistently to inspire men to take a step in the direction of faith consistently. It sounds like I'm quoting Grace Church, take one step closer to Christ, but
that's what it is.
That is what we're trying to do. So by mentioning it at all is to say, hey, have you ever considered this? We're going to unpack some ways where it could be useful for you and helpful, and some miraculous ways that actually I think fasting works as well that I was frankly baffled by. But yes, the Bible says that you should throw ashes on your face and go around moping like the Pharisees do. You should put oil on your face and be joyful so that no one knows. And certainly that has been the case up until this moment, really. Yeah. I've tried to keep a pretty darn good attitude, and I haven't been vocal about it really at all. But it does turn out that my friend network, the guys that work for me, all decided to get on board as well for their own reasons as well. And so it kind of inspired those guys and inspired some other guys. Actually, I wrote down the people. So I want to give a shout out to Tim Kelly, to Dave, to Andy. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Because this was originally my idea. To Nolan and Darren. Guys, thank you so much for jumping on board with us to do this thing. Man, good on you. And I look forward to, and Andy kind of has insinuated as much as well, I look forward to talking to you guys about your experience. I know I talked to Dave and Tim Kelly because they work for me. So I was speaking to them the days that we've done this so far, but I haven't got to talk to Nolan and Darren, and I look forward to having that conversation too, see what their experience was like.
Yeah, Nick did one last week too.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
How long?
He did a 3-day fast.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I wish you would have texted me. Thanks, Nick, goofball. I would have liked to know what the heck you were doing.
Yeah, I would have nice to know what your experience was before we jumped into it, but it is what it is.
Here you go.
Let's
So we a couple of things. One, if you find there's value in this content, please like, subscribe, comment, whatever platform you're finding this on. Just do that real quick. Even if it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts, real quick, you go there. That just helps us so much. You wouldn't even believe how helpful that truly is. Your 2 seconds of time just giving us some stars or a comment is just huge. But on the YouTube platform as well, every time you comment, it increases multifold the amount of viewership we get. And, we think that we spend a lot of time working on this message and want to get it out there to
your
the
engagement
public.
is the only way that
Anybody knows.
Yeah, and more people hear it is if you engage with it.
Viewership really doesn't mean as much as you'd think. It is the engagement with the content. So please, if you like our show, take just a second and do that. We like to start every show with a proverb.
Yeah.
You want to read the proverb
I
today,
do.
bud?
Proverbs 27:7 is what we're going to read today. It says, "One who is full loathes honey, but to one who is hungry, everything bitter is sweet." And I'll read it again. It says, "One who is full loathes honey, but to one who is hungry, everything bitter is sweet." And when I first read that, it uses some language that's obviously biblical language there, and the way that it's looking at somebody who's full versus somebody who's hungry. But there's the real world tie that as I really pondered on that this week is, when somebody is like a self-righteous person, and they're full of their own righteousness and their own knowledge and their own wisdom. When you share scripture, you share the gospel, you share knowledge of the Bible with them, they just kind of look at it like, don't you know who I am? Like, I've already got this stuff figured out. But the adverse part of that person who comes in with humility, who understands that they can't do this on their own, then when they hear the gospel, they hear knowledge or wisdom like this from the Bible, that they're more open-minded to actually receive it because they understand that they can't go through life on their own. There's a brokenness. And I think that's kind of when we look at our lives, that's kind of what we talk through on this, is that we're coming into this a point of, it's like, I can't do this without Jesus. If I'm on my own, I'm a fallen, broken man. And I recognize that, and I do things very, very poorly. I make really poor choices. And so there's a necessity that I have for Jesus. And so when I read that verse, very easy would be able to look at it and just go, you would just tie it to food. But I think there's a deeper aspect that comes with what the scripture is actually talking about.
Gosh, that's fascinating. I didn't consider that. I went the food angle. I fell to the easy trap.
No, it's not an easy trap. There's a food angle there.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously. What an interesting concept for you to dwell on then. I think that's fascinating. And it really makes me think of when you watch, if you're unfortunately stuck watching the news, and they'll do these talk shows where everybody's speaking over each other. And it's these argumentative, it's disturbing. I can't watch it, but you go to somebody's house and they have it on, and it's 3 different images, or sometimes even like 4 or 5 different people. They're just their face on the screen. It's like split screen, and they're arguing about whatever. And boy, each one of them thinks that they are so right. And there is no space for new learning in there. They have come to the terminus of their ability to learn, and now there's no space for new knowledge, and whatever the other person's bringing, they're mad about it, and they won't even look at it, is the thing. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. Is if you're talking from that angle, Proverbs 27:7, one who is full loathes honey from the comb, but to the hungry, even what is bitter tastes sweet. And if you're already filled up on your thing, no other thing in that realm makes sense. And it reminds me, we did that podcast recently, and you put some clips out of how far the earth is from the sun. And boy, did we get comments on that. Boy, people did not like your opinion. And then especially when you corrected the one person about, well, actually, that 1.2 is, that's 1 to 2%, which is what I said. And then they, of course, didn't like that. But this goes back to like what we're taught in school, this science knowledge as the full knowledge, the completion of knowledge.
Yeah.
I think. So this person thinks they've completed their knowledge, rather than going and then saying, actually, scientifically, here's what it is. They just said, no, you're wrong. They didn't explain themselves. You went and looked it up and then gave them the actual data. And then rather than continuing to engage in that specific piece, they changed to something else that you were wrong about. So at the end of the day, they just wanted you to be wrong. They were full on anything they were going to learn about this stuff. They've heard enough. It's done. And, move right on or continue attacking. And that's that goal that goal shifting,
Yeah.
which happens whenever you get into these arguments. And then again, let me say this. I've said this forever ago, but I'll say it. Careful when arguing with a fool, because from a distance, it's hard to tell who the fool is.
That's exactly right.
So if we, and bless you, man, for the way that you approached it. It's the way we both approach things when people do make comments that are offhanded. Is, hey, thank you so much for engaging with us. We appreciate you. We appreciate your thoughts on this matter. Can you extrapolate a little further on what you're trying to say so I can better understand why I'm wrong or where you're coming from or da-da-da. We try to engage like that. We think that that's probably the best way to engage. And then if somebody's just
belligerent,
well, if they're just pressed in their heart on just only being negative, then we'll discontinue the commentary.
I'll be the first one to admit if I'm wrong on things. When I was talking about the degree of the Earth to the moon, I was probably off a little bit on that. I'll own that.
I think you said 1 to 2% instead of 1.23746,
whatever it is. And here's the thing: like we talk about, we're untrained on here. I never want to be just so simple with that argument. Be like, well, I'm untrained, so I can say whatever I want to say on here. I never want to look at it like that. I always want to be, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
I didn't take a tape measure from the Earth to the sun and measure the distance.
Right.
So I can't for sure be exactly right. We look up and we do research on any topic we want to talk about. Neither one of us has a certificate for any one of these things from some university. So we're not deeply steeped in these things. But we've done our roundabout research over the course of a week to come up with a conclusion that is sometimes against us, by the way. I've found many of those. We've talked about them here. And frequently we come from a place of no knowledge, so then we'll maybe bring someone in that has some knowledge. Or we'll try to find everything we can, and then you'll find something different, and you've heard us do it here if you've listened to more than one podcast, where it turns out you got something a little different than I did, or I got something and da-da. Hey, thanks for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. Every time you do that, it helps us move our show forward.
Your interaction helps us expand our mission. So thank you for joining us.
Now back to the show. It is a bizarre thing that to be.
It's not. We say it should. We think it's bizarre, but the reality is that people that are coming against the conception that there's an intelligent design out there. So it's just. The problem is that they have to look at that and go, if I agree to these terms that there's an intelligent design, then I have to take the next step and agree that there could possibly be a God, which means my whole life I've been wrong.
Well, it means accountability too.
Yeah, right. And so now they don't want to be, there's no humility in this because they just want to be able to say, I'm right, you're wrong.
I always think the bottom line is accountability.
Yeah.
And the fear of accountability. Fear of the things I'm doing that I know somewhere in my deepest, darkest part of my heart are not balanced, fair, or right, or good.
Right.
Any one of those things. And I think the idea that at some point in time, somebody is going to say, hey, that's not right, and you have to change, you have to make those things right now, you have to go about maybe trying to do some amending of the things you've done. All of that is that's frightful if you have lived an entire life away from that system.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting and difficult. And I'm not trying to crap on the people. I'm trying to relate by saying I was there. I feared accountability, and it was a hard choice for me to then choose Christ and start walking that path because it was unfamiliar.
Yeah.
I think that's why that's the whole mission here, is to try to familiarize the hard road as the place that's actually the place you don't need to be anymore. You can come to this road that is purpose-driven, which is an easier road. It's still a hard road, but the purpose-driven nature of it can carry you through hard things. Mm-hmm. And that's ultimately the message of today too. I did stick just to the food analogy, and I was thinking about when I opened my refrigerator day 2 of the fast, all kinds of things that I haven't touched. The yogurt that sat in there for a week now that my wife bought. I was looking at it like, man, I bet that yogurt is great. I had days in advance that great looking yogurt could have been in my belly, but it didn't look great any of those other days. I opened the cabinet to grab something out of there. There's all this food, and I'm like, wow. Triscuits? I bet those are the garlic ones. Oh my God, they're the garlic ones. Oh my goodness.
My wife last night we're watching TV. She came and crawled into bed. She had rolled up meat and cheese and pickles. And I don't even care for pickles, but just the thought of a pickle, because I think that's what I'm missing the most right now is flavor of things. Because all I'm drinking right now is water with salt and lemon for a little bit of flavor. And that's the only flavor I've had for 3 days. I miss flavor. I think that's what it is that I really miss in it.
That's funny. My wife, so as we're driving, one of my nieces, shout out to Harper, you killed it, had a play that she did. They did Aladdin.
Yeah.
God, it was so cute. These kids are so cute, and they're so talented. It was so much fun. It's nuts, too. The kids are nuts. It's funny. But as we're driving over there, she's like, oh, I haven't eaten anything all day today. And I go, oh, no kidding? And she goes, oh, you don't mind if I grab a little steak? She grabs out of her purse. She has a meat stick and then cheese. So then she's doing one bite of cheese, one bite of meat, just like you're saying. I'm like, that tastes good. Yeah, that looked good. She's like, shut up.
Right.
So the point is that to the hungry, even what is bitter tastes sweet. That's that second piece. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was like everything that I normally wouldn't be mouth-watering towards. I was mouth-watering towards and feeling like, wow, that looks good. Holy smokes, that is the best looking beef stick cheese combo I've ever seen. You know, and then trying also at the same time going, all right, God, but I'm doing this thing. You're with me. I got this thing. And pretty quickly shifting my mentality out of it. And I think that was at least my experiential way to get out of any of those deeper, like and it's funny, it's like when you'd start really thinking about it, that hunger would really kick in further. Mm-hmm. So it's clearly psychological.
Yes. I'll talk about that when we get into some of the health stuff, what's actually happening physiologically to the body when that happens.
What I think the big picture here is in this proverb is you need to have a reorientation of your desires. You need to reorient what your desires are. Fasting gives you a great opportunity to that. This thing saying, if you're already full, the yogurt in the fridge doesn't look good. The meat stick and cheese doesn't look good. Probably smells bad even. You've like been hungry before you eat, and then you'll go get around other food and you're just like, oh.
Well, that's why they say never go to the grocery store hungry.
Sure.
Right.
So, yeah, because then you're just buying all this other crap that you might not need or use.
Yeah.
So the reason we decided to do this fast right now is because we wanted to honor God in this time of, it's Easter.
Yeah.
This week is Easter, this Sunday. We are on Saturday as we record this. So we want to do something building up towards Easter where we would honor God. Yeah.
That's it.
And I guess we can kind of cut now into our larger discussion.
So last night our church did this Good Friday experience. And
yeah, tell me about that. I didn't go.
Yeah, so they do this experience where it kind of leads you in. So as you walked in, you walked down this hallway, and there was palm branches, and they had music. They had voices in the background just cheering, and it was supposed to represent Jesus as he came into Jerusalem, them laying palm branches
on the donkey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And them just being excited because in their minds they thought that Jesus was this coming king who was going to reclaim this throne,
political king.
Yeah, was going to take down take down Rome. And so in their minds, that's who this Jesus was. And so as soon as Jesus comes into the temple, he's immediately flipping over the table and getting rid of the people that were making were turning his temple into a marketplace.
Yeah.
Really, what they were doing at that point in time was these people are all coming to Jerusalem, and they had to buy animals to make sacrifices.
Yep.
And they were gouging them.
Yes.
And Jesus was pissed off at what they were doing.
Sure. Righteously angered.
Yeah.
Angered.
And so you start there. And then the next phase that you move into was a time of the Passover time where they were having the meal in the upper room. Mm-hmm. And they had these verses there that were reminding what was going on, and you took communion. And so they gave us these cards at every station you went to. And so now there was a moment of communion. And it was 2 days into this. I haven't, just talking experientially now, I haven't eaten anything.
Sure.
Right. So this is the first moment I've allowed something to pass into my mouth. But I just felt I didn't feel like I was breaking my fast at that moment. I felt it was a necessary thing that
It's part
just
of
to
the
kind
deal.
of be into it.
Yeah.
From there, we moved on to this prayer table, and it was asking.
I mean, I'm better than you, obviously, because I didn't eat anything.
So much better than me. Now we're at this prayer table, and it was asking us to think about things that we were holding on to that we needed to release. And so there's symbolic things like there was a rock you would grab and hold on to this rock. And it was asking you to think about what is something that you're holding on to in your life that you need to let go to God, and spend some time praying about that. And then it was a releasal of that. And so there's some symbolism that was happening there.
Yeah.
From there, we moved into this sanctuary, and they had this video. They're so creative in how they did this. They had
do
this
fantastic
screen
work.
in front of a screen, and so there's like a double video going on.
Shout out to Grace Church.
There was blood running down at the moment of Jesus dying, and it was just like, it was overwhelming. Because now I feel like, because it was fasting, my
Senses are heightened.
so much heightened. And so it was more of an emotional time than it may have been otherwise.
Sure.
From there, you moved on to the last station where there was a cross, and it was go and write something on that cross that you need to give over to Jesus. And it was just it was an impactful moment. I think had I not been fasting, it would not have had the impact that it had. And so it set the stage for now going into this weekend of everything that Jesus did in that moment on that cross for us. That I'm so thankful that we weren't going to go because of my father-in-law. And we had 3 different people in a matter of about 5 minutes call us and say, hey, we want to come sit with your dad so you guys can go through this. It was just the coolest thing. So just community, man, having church community. It was just this beautiful thing of people just being willing to sacrifice a little bit of their time so my wife and I could go through and experience that to set us up for the weekend. It was awesome, man.
God, that's great, man.
Yeah, it was really good. But having said all that, I think fasting has become something that I need to make as a spiritual discipline in my life that I didn't think about before.
Okay.
And, I've done like intermittent fasting, which
Sure.
I think is a great way
12 hours, 18 hours.
But it's not really sacrificing anything.
Okay.
I don't feel like a 12-hour even a 24-hour sacrifice. I don't even feel like 24 hours was like when you know that mentally it's just right there at the end of this.
Okay.
It's like, okay, I can get through that. But when you go through for a full 24 hours of it, and then you're like, I still have 48 more hours of this, it really starts to mentally play on you. Like there's a mental aspect to this. I don't think as much as the physical as it is the mental part of like, I enjoy eating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your experience has been. Do you feel the same way?
Well, I thought the first 24 was the hardest.
For sure it was.
That's just my experience. Talking to Dave and Tim, they both said the same thing. As we were together yesterday, which was Friday, we were all pretty good the whole time. We're joking. Everybody seemed very enlightened in a way. So I think we have been benefiting from that heightened sensitivity to things because, some sort of something's happening in your brain because you're not eating. If you're so, accustomed to eating all the time, I imagine your brain's going, hey, what is going on here? There must be a threat of some sort. Let's go ahead and dial everything up a little bit. I mean, that would make the most sense just physiologically, I'd think. I don't know anything. Untrained.
That's the hormone ghrelin, which we'll talk about in a little
great.
bit.
So the first 24 was hard, especially the hard time was the evening time. Once I got home from work and we're just I'm done doing the things I do, and then my wife and I are just taking our last little bit of time sitting on the couch. I'd say the first day especially, I was pretty crabby.
Yeah.
She's trying to engage me in a couple of things, and I was just like, I'm trying to just get through this little bit of time right now. And she was cool about it. She knew this going into it, that this was going to be the case. I think she expected a bit because I don't eat 3 meals a day. I eat 15 different times a day. I just kind of eat is like a state of being for me. I just am always eating something. I'm Brad Pitt in any movie you've ever seen him in. He's always just eating stuff. If you notice that, every time he's got a scene, he's eating in every scene. That's me in my life. I just am always eating. I have a high metabolism, I'm told. So that plays into that. So it is habitual. There is a habit to the eating, to validate what you're saying. Certainly felt that way. It's like, now what do I do with myself? What do I do with my hands and my mouth? And this water is certainly not satiating.
No. Do you realize how much eating is a part of our lives every single day? I eat 5 or 6 meals a day, so it's kind of the same experience that I had. It was like, this is now normally when I eat. Now what?
Yeah.
And I feel like it took time, and it just slowed time down.
Yeah, there was time dialysis for sure.
Yeah, because now it's all I can think about is my body is
Did I say dialysis? Did I mean dilation?
Dilation.
Sorry. Yeah.
So, but I just felt like, my day, because now all I'm thinking about is Saturday night when I get to eat.
Yeah,
right?
there was quite a bit of forward looking.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And anytime there's forward looking, it's like being excited to go on a trip. It's like the trip is coming up. And so you're super excited for it. And it just like the time just goes so slow when you're waiting for something like that versus when you're just in the normal pace of your life. It's just, there's a time thing that goes on every day, and it just sun up to sundown goes pretty quick when you're working and eating and doing everything you normally do in a day. But when you take something away from your normal day life, it really makes you stop and think about what is happening all throughout the day. You just looked at it differently.
2 things. One, have you considered what you're going to eat?
Considered a lot of things, man.
What are you going to go with? You're still not there. You still haven't figured it out.
I'm going to be at church serving tonight because we have 4 service times tonight. So it's going to be whatever they got there.
Yeah, at our church they have a great spread in the back room for everybody that helps. They do terrific with the food. So whatever's there is what you're eating, huh?
Whatever it is.
I considered this, and shout out to my wife. Thank you, honey. We're doing ribeye steaks, grass-fed, grass-finished. And
do you put butter on your steak?
That's how she does it. The whole thing is done on a black skillet. She's going to do it. My wife killer steak preparer. And it's all like butter the whole time, and then butter dripped at the end of the thing. It's insanity.
Stop it.
I know. And then green beans and potatoes. That's what I wanted. She's like, then that's what you'll have. So that's very exciting to me.
You're like 10 hours and counting down.
Yeah, well, not so much. That's the funny thing. And that's the busier you can be, I would say. And that sounds maybe not as prayer intentional. So, but that's just the truth of my experience here. I just want to be, bear it as honestly as I can. I've had no spiritual awakening in this time, but I also haven't had a lot of time for it.
Mm-hmm.
I worked sun up to sundown the last 2 days. And then today wake up before the sun rises to meet you here. And we're doing this, and then we're going to church here afterwards. And I got some stuff to do in between. So I will remain fairly busy. I have, I think being in relationship with God means I'm always talking to him anyways. Internally, I'm always bouncing off the Spirit. So that is happening. And I've had some great opportunities to speak with, some people about Jesus in this space too, which has been kind of cool. Specifically my buddy Dave, who, he just had some questions. He grew up Catholic, and he's also doing this fast with us. And a couple days into it, he goes, what made you start doing this? And I'm explaining it. And he goes, I grew up Catholic, and then he started becoming pretty open about, never having really read the Bible. And he has a Bible, but when he tries to read it, it just doesn't make sense. And I said, I've been there. And he goes, well, how have you gotten to read the Bible better that has made it more understandable to you? And I said, I think it's a conjunction thing, meaning time. So I've been reading the Bible for 15, 16 years, and I do it every single day. Every morning I wake up, and that's just how I start my day. And I don't overwhelm myself with it. I read about a paragraph or 2, depending upon whatever that subsection is. That's what I'll read. Sometimes 2 subsections, if one's short. and just kind of digest what that is. And I pull something out of the Old Testament, something out of the New Testament. That's my rhythm there. And then I said I read a devotional. So then I'm reading my devotional. It's on my phone. Kind of read through that person's interpretation of the scripture. It's a pretty good app. And I go, so that's one component. And I go, sometimes I read stuff and I don't understand it. I'm currently in the book of Isaiah.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to understand
Sure is.
all that negativism that's in there. I mean, it's like, hey, everything's going to end and it's really bad and it's not good. And there's punishment.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be like, what is this? What is going on
That's
here?
all the prophets in the Old Testament. I
think it goes from there into Ezekiel, and it's more of the same.
I mean, it's Isaiah all the way through Malachi. So you have the major prophets and the minor prophets. And it's just remember the prophets these are people that God spoke to, and they're speaking God's word, and they're speaking condemnation on the people of Israel,
Right.
asking them to repent of their sins and come back to God. I mean, it's just this constant.
It's you're reading it going like, whoa, and it's heavy, and some of it's hard to understand. And then there's also like various people that are oriented in it. Who are these people? So I said to him, do you have a study Bible? Which, by the way, if you're reading the Bible, let me, and having any difficulties, maybe you don't, but if you do, get yourself a study Bible.
The Life Application Study Bible.
It's excellent. Near the bottom, so the top 2/3 of the book is going to be the biblical scripture, and then the bottom third is an explanation of nearly every verse.
Yeah.
And it just gives you a quick little thing of what scholars say or what the time period is or what the topography is. So you better understand what's being displayed to you in each given piece of information. And it's very useful. And I said, and then, buddy, you got to go to church. But find a church where they do expository reading.
Yeah.
You want it just out of the Bible. You want them reading directly out of the Bible and then explaining the Bible word for word, what it means, so you can better understand it. And then I go, and then this sounds like a lot, but get yourself some people around you. I mean, you've got me always, I said, but I said some other people around you that also are doing the same thing. They're on that same journey, that read the Bible. And he's like, yeah, all right. I'm really feeling like I need to do something. My life feels like I wake up, I do the things I do, and then I go to bed and my wheels are just spinning. Hey, thanks for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. Every time you do that, it helps us move our show forward.
Your interaction helps us expand our mission. So thank you for joining us.
Now back to the show. And I was like, I can relate to that so deeply.
Yeah, if you don't have any sort of eternal focus, then you are stuck in the rat wheel every day, just going through the motions of work. And what do you really have to look forward to?
Especially as you continue to age and you just start to look back upon your life and go, what's any of this worth so far?
That's right. Man, that's exactly right.
And it's in a relationship with Christ that you can get some eternal purpose, where you can start really trying to contribute to the kingdom of heaven. And in so much, you will watch people's lives be changed right before your very eyes.
Yeah.
And then you can look back and go, now I'm great friends with my buddy Andy Lamb, who used to be a drunk that came into my bar that I hated to see. He's one of my best friends in the world. Like, that is part of my story.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful part of my story, and it's created this. And that is part of the kingdom of heaven that God is offering anybody who's seeking, who's trying to find him, is that next person that's out there right down the line from you that's going to need maybe an encouraging word at that time, or maybe you'll need the encouraging word and you're going to join with them through Christ and develop a friendship, or, who knows, if you're a single man, maybe that's where you can meet your woman, so on and so forth. But for Dave specifically, he just felt, I think this fasting thing, that was the big component I received from him, was him as a man who doesn't engage with church right now, doesn't engage with his Bible so much. Really, it was opening that door for him. And I just thought, how amazing is God?
Well, it's exactly right. And
again, because I wasn't finding a lot of time to just be like in prayer, reading the Bible
No,
consistently.
but because this is a practice of your whole entire life, when
Yes.
when the moment came up, you were ready and available to be able to answer these questions for
I'm glad
him.
you said that. Thank you.
And I think that's the reality of what we want people to gather from this podcast of why we're doing this is we want to be able to equip people so that when the time comes that you are ready and available, that you have answers. It says that in Peter, it says, be prepared to give an answer for the hope that you have. And so if I want to be prepared to give an answer for the hope that I have, then that means I have to live my life in such a disciplined way so that when it comes up, I can have answers. You're not going to have all the answers.
Sure.
I got some. And how do I have those answers? Because I've consistently done these spiritual practices over time, and I've aligned myself with other men who are doing that as well. And because I'm aligned myself with other men who are doing it as well, when these times come up, I don't feel like I'm on an island all alone. I actually feel like somebody I can respond to, have conversations with. Maybe I'm not seeing it right, and very often I'm not seeing it right. And so to have other men that can help me see it right is an advantage to everybody. But fasting, the reason why we've done this is there's actually, I want to kind of pull us into the biblical part of this now, because we can look at the very beginning in Exodus 34, when Moses goes up on the mountain to receive the 10 Commandments. The Bible says that he fasted 40 days and 40 nights. And so this is the very first time that we see fasting happening in the Bible.
Okay.
Now, we see it happen all throughout the Bible now, but this is
Certainly.
the first time that we can actually see it happen. Of course, we see Jesus later on going in the desert, fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. And I'm not saying you should go fast for 40 days and 40 nights, but I am saying that there is a spiritual discipline to fasting that I had never really, until I've done this.
This all came about from our good buddy Rashad, and from 2 New Year's ago,
Yep.
sitting outside on your back porch with Rashad, and he said, yeah, I'm going to do my
Annual.
annual, was it 3-day or 7-day, buddy? With Rashad, you never know. Rashad's a savage. Shout out Rashad.
Shout out to Commission 127, repping the Commission 127 gear.
So he said, I'm going to do this thing. We're like, huh? You do that? And he's like, yeah, it's great. I've been doing it for X amount of years at that time. I do it yearly. Here's why I do it. And he, again, to what you're saying there, he had all the reasoning. He had biblical backing for it. Rashad's a very intelligent man. So he just laid it all out. And we're like, well, now I'm condemned.
Mm-hmm. But he also gave us like the physical part of the health benefits too that we're going to talk about here.
For sure. But he's kind of the one that we should give credit to for this, because he inspired. Now, it took us 2 years. We're a little slow to get it. That's all right.
It's all right.
But he inspired this with his movement of that. I wanted to give him a moment here. That's an interesting one. So 40 days, 40 nights.
Anytime we see fasting in the Bible,
Okay.
the reason why they're doing fasting in the Bible is they're doing it as a connection to God. They need something from God. And so because they need something from God, they're taking something away from their life that forces them to rely on God. And in doing so, there's this humility that comes with it. And so does God listen to us more when we fast? Maybe. It seems that when we take something on that we are relying on him, that he sees the humility of that and wants to respond. Maybe not the way that we want him to, but we see a deeper connection with God. We talked about this before we hit record. Esther.
Yes.
So I started looking up where have they fasted. We see it in Leviticus. We see this as the Day of Atonement. They call it Yom Kippur.
Yes.
So there was a time where part of Judaism is that they fast for a 24-hour period, and in doing so, they are spending that time in prayer. And so that's why they do it. And they even still do this today. This is a practice of Jews today. Then we look at Judges, and they needed God's help in a battle, and so they start fasting. We look at the story of Esther, which I found a fascinating story. I've read the Bible so many times.
Yes.
And, I read this verse in Esther chapter 4, verse 16, where it says the Jews,
I'll read it. Go. Esther 4:16. Go, gather all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even if it is against the law. And if I perish, I'll perish.
That's such an
gangster.
It's gangster.
That's Esther saying that, by the way. Women
in the Bible.
Come on now. That is a gangster woman
So-
who says like, she's the queen, by the way, but to go into the king's presence is against the laws set by the land.
He could kill you for doing that.
That is the outcome if anybody, including his wife, the queen, interrupts him. In his like studio, whatever that is, in his space, you can only go to the king if you are asked to come see him.
You're summoned.
If you're summoned to him.
So to give context to that, so when I read that verse, when it said, if I should perish, I perish, I'm like, well, why would she perish? And
Yeah,
so
what's going
I
on
start
here?
backing up and I read a little bit more, and I'm like, well, okay, so Mordecai is coming in and asking her, because the Jews there's this guy Haman who's come in and said he wants all the Jews to be killed, and King Xerxes like, yeah, go for that. Well, why did that happen? And so you start reading the backstory to get all the context to this, and so,
We both did that, by the way. What's interesting that can happen sometimes when you're reading the Bible, you could have read something 100 times, and all of a sudden you read it and it hits different. Your life has given you this opportunity to look a little deeper, which it was funny. That's what we were laughing about as we started this show today. We're both laughing that we read the exact same verse and found ourselves reading the entire book. So we read Esther just to kind of figure out what is this complex matter happening. And we were both inspired to do it. I don't think that's a coincidence. It's very interesting. So please continue. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, so this is King Xerxes. So King Xerxes is the king of Persia,
Yep.
right? So if you've seen the movie 300, we see King Xerxes on there. So there's the
Historical
This
tie-in.
is historical. So you can go back and look at historical ties to what this actual story is. And so he has this Queen Vashti who he had summoned and she wouldn't come. And so he banished her. He was like, get away from me. You're no longer my queen. And so he summons all the most beautiful women in all of his kingdom to come in. And he finds Esther.
For his harem.
And he finds favor in Esther. He thinks she's very beautiful.
Yep.
And so his heart was softened to her.
And she's a Jew.
She is a Jew.
Yeah.
He doesn't know that, but she is a Jew.
Yeah.
Then we have on the scene this guy, Haman,
Yeah.
who he is
A top political guy below Xerxes.
below Xerxes, and he is coming through the city, and people are bowing to him. And there's this Jew, Mordecai, who's not bowing to him because he bows to one God,
Yes.
and that's God in heaven. And so Haman sees Mordecai and is like, "This guy's not bowing to me. Why not?"
Because he's a Jew. And they go, well, they're supposed to be, by law, everyone's supposed to bow to you. So if these Jews are not going to bow to you, they got to go.
Yeah.
And the king agrees under that context, not realizing, again, as you said, that Esther, his wife, the queen, is also a Jew.
Yep. So Haman puts out into all the kingdom that all the Jews are to be killed, and King Xerxes puts his signet ring on and says, "You shall have this today."
Yeah.
Now, in the meantime, there's these two guys that are at the city gates that are conspiring to kill King Xerxes. And so Mordecai finds out
Yes.
and goes and reports this to the king. But
Saving the king's life.
saving the king's life. But Haman somehow gets the glory of all that,
He
right?
kind of ties himself into it. He's like, I'll let the king know. Thanks for giving me that info. I'll let the king know. You just stay. He doesn't want to see you anyways, Malachi. Get on out of here.
Yeah.
Malachi's also, by the way,
Mordecai.
Mordecai, rather. Sorry. He's also a political guy
Yes, he is.
in this, and he's the uncle of Esther.
He's raised Esther, so Esther's parents were killed, so he's Esther's uncle. So,
Okay.
But he raised Esther, and
Yeah.
so he's helping her
In
along
the
the way.
position of her father.
Yeah, he's helping her navigate this new life that she has with the king. So now what ends up happening is Mordecai finds out that this decree has gone out and all the Jews are to be killed. And so he goes to Esther and says, "Esther, you have to go to the king."
Here, talk to the king.
And she's like, "He hasn't summoned me. If I go to the king, he can kill me." And so this is where we're on the scene now. Of like she knows that if all the decree goes out, all the Jews that has to be killed, then that means she would be killed as well. And so now she says, "I'm going to go to the king. He could kill me. So I need the king's favor. And so before I go to the king in this favor, what are we going to do?"
We're going to submit ourselves to fasting. We're going to submit ourselves to God ultimately, and we're going to pray for his intervention.
For 3 days and 3 nights, we are not going to eat. We're simply going to pray and ask for God's favor in this. And what happens? God shows favor. She goes walking in. He holds his scepter out. And if he holds his scepter out, this is the only way that they will be free
Yep.
from being killed for that.
Yep.
But he has favor on Esther. And where did that favor come from? I believe it came from God.
His heart was changed.
It was. And so he asked her, "What do you want me to do?" And so she invites him to this banquet.
Yes.
And he says, "You can have anything up to half the kingdom. What do you want?" Well, she says, "I want you to come back to this next banquet."
Yeah. She says, let's go to, all right, I got another banquet. This is going to be even better. Come on
Yeah.
over to that one.
And so in the meantime, Haman thinks, he's the man. And that night, King Xerxes goes and he starts looking through those records and finds out that Mordecai is the one that actually had reported of these people being killed. And so he goes, why hasn't Mordecai been rewarded for this? And
He
they're
calls in Haman again and says, hey, man, what's going on with this? Yeah? Something to that effect?
Well, what ends up happening is that he finds out Mordecai is the one who saves him. And so he calls Haman in and says, what should we do for the man that saved me?
That's
and Haman thinks it's him.
He goes, well, you should give him all this great stuff.
You should give him your robe and let him be charted into the city and let everybody just think he's the man.
Yeah.
And so Xerxes like, let that be done. And let it be done for Mordecai. And so now Haman had these gallows built outside of his house to hang Mordecai.
Yeah, because he wasn't following the rules, and you got to be killed. This is how they were going to kill all the Jews, was to hang them all. So he'd built huge gallows.
Yep. So now they come into this second banquet, and they bring Mordecai in, and he says, Mordecai, thank you so much for saving my life. This is what we're going to do for you. Mordecai then shares with the king what it actually Haman had done, and Haman ends up being hung in the end. And in the end, all the Jews
on the gallows
that he had built for Mordecai outside of his home.
That's tough.
And because of what they did, they changed this decree for all the Jews to be saved. They allowed the Jews to take back over what was theirs.
Yeah.
And there's all these beneficial things that happened in the Jews in the end. But it became because Esther chose to humble herself. All the Jews in the area humbled themselves. Yep. They fasted 3 days and they prayed before the Lord, and the Lord saved them.
Beautiful.
It is a beautiful story. And had I not fasted, I don't know that I read Esther the same way that I read it.
Yeah, that's great. I don't have anything to contribute to that.
It's beautiful.
It's a beautiful story.
Beautiful story.
That is the fun of, I guess this is what I'll contribute. There is power in the Word of God. There is inspirational power in the Word of God. And it's so fun as a Christian when you read the Bible and you get touched by a story. It really connects with something internally, the Spirit, that fulfills something in you that you didn't maybe even know you needed fulfilled.
Yeah.
And I hope women out there listening get inspired by Esther. It's a terrific story, and I'm so glad for your enthusiasm behind it as well, because frequently God's story is received as Dave, my good buddy, receives it, which is confusion, frustration. I think his heart is drawn towards God, as I think everyone's heart is drawn towards God in a way.
It is.
And when we reject it over time out of whatever causes that rejection, and it can be the confusion, it can be the hardening of your heart from confusion. And I think that it's unfortunate. And it's opportunities like this that you were just given there, that inspiration, that to explain the story with enthusiasm, be excited about it, that can actually capture some other people that maybe didn't ever find that kind of enthusiasm in a story.
Yeah, it was fun, man. You know, Isaiah, you were talking about Isaiah.
Yeah.
Isaiah 58, there's these verses in 6 through 12 that talk about fasting and the benefits and the blessing of fasting. And, so just some simple things. So if we start in verse 6, it talks about spiritual freedom. It talks about deliverance. It talks about bringing liberation, provision for the needy. True fasting involves sharing food with the hungry, providing shelter for the homeless, providing clothing. Then we get other benefits. There's healing that comes from it, and righteousness that comes from it, and protection that comes from it. We see answered prayer that comes from fasting. We see guidance that comes from fasting. We see contentment and strength and refreshment, rebuilding and restoration. There's all these promises that come from fasting. Again, I've read these verses before, and I love the fact that you had said, "Hey, we should consider to do this."
Hold on.
It came from a shad.
No, I said, I've been feeling like I should do something sacrificial towards God.
Yeah,
Because I just feel like my time of silence in the night just isn't quite reaching me there. And I thought, the closest I ever feel to God is when I'm going through something hard. And I thought, boy, and instantly in my mind, I thought, the hard times were always something I was trying to, come off of alcohol or come off of drugs. That sucked. And that was hard, but it actually got me closest to God at that time. It inspired this relationship towards God all those years ago. But even, getting buying a new house and selling our old house. And I just run through hard parts of my life. And it's in those times when I'm investing in my relationship with God that I've been inspired. And I thought, why do I have to go through something hard? Can I self-induce hard? And that's when it came to me to do this fasting thing. And then I thought of Rashad, having mentioned it years ago, and thought, that might be something. So then I only mentioned that I was going to do it to you. And you said, I'll do it with you.
What iron sharpens iron. This goes back
awesome.
back to this. I didn't have any, I spent some time in prayer, but I didn't have any, I haven't had any, these deep revelations of God being like, here's what I want you to do next. Here's what I had. I had this heightened experience reading the Bible that I have not had in a while. It felt new to me. I felt renewed as I was doing it. Because I felt purposeful. Not that I haven't felt purposeful in the past of reading the Bible, and I felt this excitement reading the Bible and seeing this spiritual discipline that God has littered all throughout Scripture that I have missed over the years because fasting sucks.
And also, you don't have any personal experience with it. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have any personal experience with it, how can you relate to it?
That's it. I've done intermittent fasting in the past where I'm like,
same.
I've had a 8-hour window to eat and a 12-hour window where I fasted. It's not the same because it's half that time you're asleep anyway. So it's really 6 hours you go without eating, and it's not hard to do that. This has been a different type of hard that I have not experienced in my life before because I've never done it before. And there's part of me that thinks maybe I wish I would have known going into it, but there's other part of me that's I'm glad I didn't have a lot of data going into this, that I just had to actually suffer through it because there is a suffering to it, but I've had to suffer through it. But in that suffering, it's caused me to rely on God more than because there's those moments where I fed my father-in-law yesterday and I'm making him lunch and I'm smelling all these things and in my brain I'm like, nobody would know. I'll just dive into this real quick and then I'll keep going. But then it's just I want to do this, not so I can come on and be look at what I did, but I was I want to connect with God in a way I haven't.
I want to see what God has at the end of this.
Yeah, I do.
That's the whole point. I wanted to honor God to begin with, but now as I'm this far into it, I want to see what God's plan is for it. And it sounds like already beneficially, I've had a couple of great interesting conversations, specifically the one I had with Dave. What a beautiful conversation. What a great opportunity. We don't do that all the time. That's not how we talk on the job site. We're handling business on the job site. But for him to take a minute during what would have normally been a spot where you run off to your truck and grab a snack and chow down a snack, that's just not what's happening. Mm-hmm. So we had this time to fill where we're sitting in the shade because we're working on outside. And it's hey, let's talk about Jesus. It's awesome. That just doesn't happen because the time's not there for it. And for your part, it sounds like multiple things. You had a great experience at
Good Friday.
Good Friday. You had a great experience there that you said yourself you probably wouldn't have had as deep of an experience had you not been in this place of submission. And then secondly,
I spent 3 hours in the Word yesterday.
That was going to be my second piece.
I never spend 3 hours in the Word, ever.
It's hard to find 3 hours.
Yeah, I don't have time.
But also, again, to validate Dave's thing, life is consumptive. And the Bible sometimes is hard to digest. For some reason, when I am in submission to God, when I'm submitting to something hard, it does open up this channel that makes his word more understandable. And I think it's because so many people biblically were struggling. And we live in a very good society where there's very little struggle.
We have refrigerators.
We have so many excellent components to our lives that make them very smooth. And we get upset on little things that really are unsubstantial in the larger course of things. Throughout the month, I'll get angry 100,000 times. And maybe one of those times is actually valid or dangerous. Mm-hmm. So we are consistently little discontented machines.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. And I think it's in a moment like this where you are doing something that's a little bit difficult in its own way, where you're getting more rooted in suffering. And with those roots comes clarity in God's word because there's so much suffering there.
That's exactly right. I want to take us just real quickly to one more passage of scripture, and then I want to look at the some health benefits and some of the stories that we talked about. So Matthew 6:16-18. If we look at this passage of scripture, it actually gives us some directives on how it wants us to handle fasting in this day and age. This is, I should have had this pulled up here, so forgive me really quickly here. All right, Matthew 6:16-18 says this. It says, and when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces. Their fasting may be seen by others. So their fasting may be seen by others. Truly, I say to you, they have received the reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you.
My wife thought of that verse, and she complimented me on it. I think it was last night, where she goes, I got to tell you, I'm impressed that you haven't been complaining the whole time. That doesn't speak real well of me on the normal basis. But it was very kind. She meant it in a kind way. I received it that way, which is, I thought that verse stuck out in my head before I even started. It was the first one I read, and I thought, yep. So there's been moments where I could have complained, and rather than digging into the complaint department of my brain, I dug into the prayer part. And that's when I would call out to God internally and just be like, all right, God, I'm doing this. You and I are doing this. I'm doing this. You did this a heck of a lot longer than me. And I'm going to do this. And we're doing this together, and you got me, and there's a purpose here, and yada, yada. Mm-hmm. And through that kind of thought process, that prayer process, I received relief frequently.
Yeah.
Because it was like resetting my internal battle and re-fortifying my position, going, nope, I've dug my heels in here, and they're going to stay here till I'm good and done.
Yeah.
Till I've done what I set out to do, kind of deal. Yeah. I think of, the first time that we mentioned, with Esther, it was a fast and a prayer for intervention. But this other one that I found I thought was beautiful is in Acts, and it's got Barnabas and Saul.
Mm-hmm.
Now they did fasting and prayer for guidance. Like, what's the next step for all of us guys? Now these guys are all under threat. Saul has just met Jesus, and he is relatively new to the faith, Christian faith.
Yep.
He had been a Pharisee, and he had been a big leader in that church, but now he's against that church ultimately, or at least that's how the church of the Pharisees sees Saul. He's now an enemy. We need to kill him. He knows too much about us, and he's exposing stuff. He's a danger. Mm-hmm. And so is Peter and all the other disciples as well.
Well, the Pharisees really, truly in this time too, what they were most afraid of was losing their position of power, because they were famous. Everywhere they walked, they were looked at.
Right.
If they know if this Messiah comes on the scene and changes all that, they lose their position of power. And so they're trying to stifle anything that they can, because they don't want to lose that.
They're fearful.
They are fearful.
They're fearful of change. They didn't even know what the change would be ultimately.
And
it seems.
You just said it. They were looking for guidance. And this ties back to Isaiah 58. Remember that these guys are Jews. They know the scriptures. They know that one of the aspects of fasting is they will get guidance. And so this is why they are going now in Acts, and they're asking for guidance from God on what to do.
So as they're building up for what's our next step, because that's what it is. They've all now, they're all together in this place, and they're all praying together and talking together and having fellowship, by the way, and inspiring each other through their stories. I'm sure this is where Saul is still telling these guys, like, oh my gosh, here's exactly what happened to me. I was blind. Like, God blinded me for a little bit until I went and met this other fella. And then hearing the word from him, the scales fell from my eyes. Now I see things for the way they should be. And Peter's going, holy smokes, man, I denied Jesus 3 times. Can you believe that? Yada, yada. So this is like them meeting in this initial thing. And then they're going, well, what do we do now? And in that place of what do we do now, Acts 13:2-3, while they were worshiping the Lord and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them. So after they had fasted and prayed, they placed their hands on them and sent them off. So it's like these guys are just getting, this is the initial marching orders for Christ.
It's the beginning of the
Paul's
church.
not right. His name isn't even Paul yet. His name's still Saul. So he hasn't even changed his name over to that yet. He does that. This happens in the next like 2 or 3 lines. He's not talking to Corinth. He's not talking to anybody else yet. He hasn't written any of these letters that we end up reading as the Bible goes along. You start to read
Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, these letters to these churches.
Right.
Yeah.
This is Paul way before that. These guys, Peter and his homies, they're the elders. That's why they're laying their hands on him going like, God bless you and good luck out there. It's going to be nuts.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're scared to death. They were still...
They're hiding. Everything's done.
Well, they still didn't know if Saul was the real deal either, right?
Great point.
So they're still, they knew who Saul was. They knew that Saul was trying to kill them.
He had stood over Stephen when Stephen stoned to death.
Right.
So he had
So the disciples are still looking at this guy like, are you just trying to infiltrate us?
That's why they're there hearing that story. That's why they're praying. That's why they're fasting. God, give us guidance. And then God receives it and says, I want these guys to go do a mission for me. They are with us. Pray for him and send him off.
This is the whole book of Acts is the beginning of the church. Remember that they're going out from here and they're starting to spread churches all around the continent that they're in, right? The Asia, and we see this now in Europe. This is where the proliferation of the church starts is in the book of Acts. And we are following that church today because of what these men did. And what did they do? They started by fasting because they knew that what they were doing was going to cost them their life. God had already told them that Jesus already told them this is going to cost you everything.
Right.
But they had to continually go to God in fasting because they needed him. They relied on him. It wasn't just this thing of like, we see God there. It was this reliance on God. We need you. We need your power as we go out before you.
And again, I think it's the reorientation of necessities in their lives. It's God's having them do this fasting thing so that they reorient who is in charge. As life goes along and you're moving through life, you can start to feel like you're in charge of your own stuff all the time. You do go to work. You do work hard. That I think something in fasting happens where you go, holy smokes, God, you're in charge. And look at this great body that you made that I haven't eaten in multiple days. And it's like chugging right along. In fact, it's getting a little better somehow. Some things are happening internally now that science has now discovered we're going to talk about here.
Let's talk about that.
Science has now discovered that this thing that they've been doing for 6,500 years or when whatever, thousands and thousands of years, let's say, there's been these fasting traditions. And then it turns out science is now looking at it going like, actually, this is pretty good stuff. And there's a lot of health benefits and we don't know why. But when you start doing this thing, once you hit these milestones, 24 hours, in fact, let's validate
there's
intermittent fasting.
A ton of benefits
over the course of a month. That's really or multiple months. If you're doing intermittent fasting, that's where you're going to see benefits. 12 on, 12 off, or 18 and 6, whatever these breakdowns are. That has to be done over a long portion of time to really see those daily benefits that you're looking for. We chose to do this one, which was a 72 hour, because we can start seeing some pretty massive benefits at the 48th hour. Mm-hmm. So what do you got?
So there's this chemical produced in the brain, in the stomach called ghrelin, Grelin. They call it the hunger hormone. And what they've actually found, what this chemical does when you don't eat, it stimulates growth hormone release.
Yeah. So
it starts to create these stem cells within our body that are repair cells.
Yes.
So there's this process called autophagy. And autophagy is where your body will actually go in and kill off all these bad cells that are in your body, the free radicals.
Precancerous, possibly.
Very much so. And so now in the 3-day fast, your body will now start to go in and repair cellularly all these bad cells that are in your body.
Yep.
Reduces inflammation, helps prevent disease. Some cancers can help be prevented during this time. Muscle preservation. This is one of the fascinating things, right? So the brain needs glucose to function. Well, we get glucose from the food that we eat. Well, when you're not eating, your brain still needs glucose. So what it does, it goes into the fat cells of your bodies and pulls out these triglycerides, which then go into your liver, and your liver converts them over into glucose.
Yes. That
allows your brain to keep functioning. And it can do this for a certain period of time. And the purpose of that is not to start eating into the muscles. but actually start to go into the fat deposits that are in your body to help your brain survive.
It's that insulin sensitivity. It resets your insulin
Yes.
tracker internally.
That's what it does, man. Like when I started reading through all these things that the human body does, and one of the things two things. Number one, I saw that the beneficial health aspect of doing this, but it just built my case for Christ even more to actually see what the human body does when you don't eat, how the body starts producing all these hormones and chemicals in your body to allow your body to survive, but not only survive, to thrive during these times.
And to heal.
That was one of the big things.
The inflammation one is really what captured my attention so heavily, is because I think so many people are unknowingly struggling with gut inflammation and digestive inflammation.
I've got digestive issues, man.
You've got
diverticulitis.
Right.
Well, diverticulosis, when it flares up, it's diverticulitis, and it's uncomfortable and painful.
And you're clearly not the only one. Every time you bring that up in a group of people, 2 or 3 other people go, yeah, me too.
I got stomach stuff too.
It's becoming more prevalent in our society. It maybe has something to do with the food. I don't pretend to know that. I'm also not a health specialist. But for my own self, because there's been no food, I've drank a ton more water, more fluids. I've been more fluid conscious because it does help satiate the emptiness that your stomach has.
Mm-hmm.
When you get, I start feeling crummy and I go, oh, I should probably just drink some water. And all of a sudden I do feel a heck of a lot better. Really, my body's probably craving that. That tells me that I'm probably low on it most of the rest of the time.
Yeah.
And I get headaches because I work outside all day and I'll only drink as much as time allows.
Have you had any headaches during this
Yes.
time? Yeah.
Which is probably sugar, because
Yes.
I consume sugar, and not having it for multiple days, that'll give you a headache. My wife actually suggested, I believe it's Himalayan salt.
That's what I've been doing the Baja Gold sea salt.
Okay.
Which is full of minerals.
Whatever mineral salt, it
Himalayan
looks
pink
different.
salt. Yep.
It's not just mineral. Hers has a bunch of other stuff in it.
Yeah.
My wife's like, my wife does this stuff all the time. She's like, 3 days. But, hey, I'm taking little hits of that from time to time, that salt, and that helps a lot too. So there's a few things that my body doesn't have enough of that again, in the suggestions that we're making here moving forward, if you should ever choose to try a 3-day or any sort of longer opportunity here, I would suggest certainly finding out some of these salts you can take that are going to be helpful in those moments when you're just feeling like, oh, this is your body's probably craving more some sort of mineral than it's really craving food. Your brain's craving food because that's where you get the minerals from, is the food that you normally consume. But ultimately, your body's probably lacking in something that you just don't consume naturally, or you already consume naturally. Sorry.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
For sure it does. There's this tie that there's this Bible verse in 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20 where it says your body is a temple.
Yeah.
Right. And, part of your body being a temple it's tying it in that passage of scripture, it's tying it to sexual sin. But there's also an aspect, I believe, of that my body is a temple and I should treat it the way that I need to treat it. I think there's an aspect too that I can start to look at the health portion of this, of I want to treat my body well.
Yeah.
And so, part of this fasting has been going long term. There's a lot of benefits when you start to look at longevity. Peter Attia and dude who played Thor, Chris Hemsworth. They did a 4-part documentary called Longevity, and one of the aspects they talked about was fasting. They did a 4-day fast, and they talked about the Peter Attia, who's a doctor who, if you're looking for a longevity doctor to follow online, Peter Attia he's dynamic. He understands it, and he also is able to explain it in such a way that you can.
He is trained.
He is trained. So listen to him. But one of the things they were talking about that he also talked about was interacts with the brain's reward system, dopamine.
Yeah.
And so fasting helps clear out some of those receptors as well that are in your brain, so that
you're doing like a dopamine reset.
Mm-hmm. And so there is that dynamic of it too. But the point I was trying to make was that the Bible tells us that your body's a temple, to treat it well. And so to treat it well means that I have to maybe think about the sugars that I put into my body. I've gone sugar-free since the first of the year. and I can tell a huge difference in my body. And just, I mean, I've lost almost 20 pounds now.
Sure.
Just by not eating sugar. But the way that I feel is like the inflammation in my body is gone. I've had stomach issues, and I haven't had any stomach. I've felt nothing in my stomach over the last 3 days, oddly enough.
Yeah.
That I actually thought I was going to maybe wrestle with a little bit more because of being hungry, but it hasn't been that way at all.
Yeah.
I've been really surprised by that.
Hey, thanks for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. Every time you do that, it helps us move our show forward.
Your interaction helps us expand our mission. So thank you for joining us.
Now back to the show. So I wrote these down. A simple Google search will give you this list here. Health benefits of a 72-hour fast. Weight loss, you can lose up to 12.5 pounds. Holy smokes, that is a lot. Dave said he was down 4 pounds by yesterday. I don't know why he's on the scale so much. Grown man.
I haven't lost any weight.
You do have insulin sensitivities are improved, reducing type 2 diabetes. So if type 2 diabetes is the one that you acquire through your eating habits. That's just, I think, as simple as we can put it. Type 1 is the one like Dave has, which is you discover it when you're very young and then you have it through life. Type 2 is the one that you get. And if you do this, even in a 72-hour fasting, you will get wildly lower insulin numbers. Mental clarity through ketosis.
Thank you for talking about ketones. Talk more about that.
So Rogan, I think, is the one who really introduced me to ketones, him and Huberman, talking about how a ketogenic life is the best way to be. And I think they both kind of went through periods of time where they did that. There are arguments to be made
for the keto diet,
or at least, again, maybe it's more like, oh boy, I'm someone who I do not get behind a full life change for just setting it so far that for the rest of my life, I'm going to do this thing. I think that's just such a weird way to live life. I don't find that that's useful to me. I set goals. So I'd say that maybe if you're bent on doing some sort of ketogenic diet, shoot for a month or something. Hey, 30 days, I'm going to do a keto diet and see what kind of health benefits I get. Talk to your doctor first, obviously.
I did a keto diet back in 2017.
Yeah.
I did keto for 2 months. I started running, and I went from 230 pounds to 196 pounds is what my lowest was. And I look back at pictures of that. I'm like,
pretty thin.
I look sick. I had people
you look
like,
emaciated. Yeah.
Like, hey, is everything
cancer?
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And my wife even looks at those pictures now. She's like, let's not do that again.
Sure. Now that probably has to do with the way you were doing it and yada, yada. There's some other things you probably could have been doing differently because.
Well, I started running too, which
Sure.
just totally eats into like muscles. Nonetheless, I've just wanted to point out I've done the keto diet. And
so again, to repeat after Andy, the reduced inflammation's huge. That's everywhere. You can find that out. And what a neat deal to be able to reduce. When you're inflamed, your body's working harder. That's just that's a simple way to put it. Inflammation means resources that could be used in other places of the body need to be used in that place where the inflammation's happening so that it can kind of try to get away from that. You can get into these cycles where you're constantly inflamed for one reason or another through frequently your diet. So then your body's always exerting extra energy to try to fight that. It helps your metabolic health, so your triglyceride levels, your blood pressure, and HDL, which is the good cholesterol, are all improved. You increase your autophagy. That removes the damaged cells. You get improved gut health, as you've already stated specifically for yourself, and then increased hormone production, growth hormone. Mm-hmm. There's all a couple of things there I wanted to bring up quick. As we round the circle here and nearly about to land this plane. These are anecdotal.
I got you.
Jeez Louise. These are anecdotal stories that I found online and we will attach these to the episode if you want to watch them. I like a guy named Dr. Berg.
That's your guy, man.
That's my dude. He's on YouTube. He has killer information about health and gut health and just health in general. He's every day putting out new videos. He's changed the way I sleep. I was always someone who slept poorly. It turns out that with ashwagandha, magnesium, and B1, I sleep for 8 hours perfectly. Now, I sleep like everyone else has always told me they sleep throughout their whole life. And
Do you snore?
Maybe.
Yeah.
My wife says sometimes.
Sometimes.
So certainly that happens from time to time. But Dr. Berg does little interviews from time to time about people that do different health supplements and such, always vitamin based, to try to see if that can work better than maybe medicine. So there's this dude, Guy Tenenbaum, he's a French guy. He had bone cancer, stage 4. And I say had because he did a 45-day fast in conjunction with
Chemo?
No, he didn't do chemo at all. And we'll get to a guy that kind of incorporated a few different things. But in his 45 days, all he consumed was green tea, ginger, turmeric, pepper, salt, protein supplements, and whole garlic. And in doing that, he was able to, when he went, they gave him 6 months to live. When they first diagnosed him, they said 6 months is probably the outstretch of your life right now. With how fast this tumor is growing inside of you, we don't give you real long. It was like in his chest and in his abdomen, it was really spreading. And he's still alive to this day.
He starved it. He starved the tumors.
I'm just telling you what he did. I don't know what a scientist would say or a doctor would say, but this guy did that. And he went to multiple doctors in advance. He didn't just go to one doctor. He went to multiple different doctors. You can watch his whole story, and I'll attach it. But through this fasting, starting with a 45-day fast, immediately when he found out, he just started fasting intentionally and taking some of these things. He had this he's now cancer-free.
Wow. There's some science out there about cancer can't grow in an alkaline body. So if your body's acidic, so it feeds off of sugars, is what cancers feed off of, right?
Sure.
So if you turn your body into an alkaline state, which is, you'll see a lot of stuff about alkaline water out there, it kills the cancer out.
It starves it.
It starves it.
That, again, not doctors here. You should seek a medical professional if you want information. These guys, both in these stories, though, said that the medical professionals they sought out did not have this as an option. This was something they found online, doing their own research, and they had these benefits. It's not to say everybody will. The second one I have is Fred Evard. He had colon cancer, stage 3, which is stage 4 is the worst.
Stage 4 means it's metastasized to something else. So it's spread is what stage 4 means.
Yes. He did a 21-day fast. And I should say the colon cancer, that killed his father and his grandfather. That's what they died of. So it's the specific kind of colon cancer he had is genetic, apparently.
Yeah.
And when he was you see him, you watch a video, he's a very healthy guy. He's always been healthy. He's into jujitsu and Muay Thai, and he's a very active guy, always had been. So he thought he was taking he's a very healthy eater, by the way. When he talks about how he's always eaten, it's very healthy. He stays away from all the sugars. And still, here he was at a specific age, I forget, it was like 58 or something, 48. And he's having these issues of pain. He ended up doing 3 rounds of chemotherapy in conjunction with a fasting. Now, he did this 21-day full fast, no eating, just water and the minerals that he would take, salts and stuff like that. And again, you can check out his video. I'll attach it. But then he did a week during Christmas time, he did a week of regular eating food. And then he did another 21-day fast where he would do throughout Monday through Friday, he would fast. And then on Saturday and Sunday, he would do one meal and he would do grass-fed ribeye and blended in the blender vegetables because he was in pain. This cancer was in his rectum and up into his colon. Mm-hmm. In this initial phase here, he was in a lot of pain. That's why he ended up the doctor said, if we got to do this chemo, that's going to at least start attacking this thing and it's going to hopefully get you out of some of this pain. So he did this in conjunction with his healthcare professional and with the chemotherapy. But as of a year ago when this video came out, he was cancer-free.
God created this magnificent human body to heal itself. And
it seems to be that he gave us...
Not maybe. Body heals itself. Now,
it certainly does.
I'm never going to be the guy who's going to be like, just do all these natural things and, just pray only and don't do anything the doctor says to do, because there's...
Start with the doctor.
Yeah.
Here's what I think you're saying, and here's what I'll say is God gave us this great book here that is a instruction manual for life. And in that instruction manual, he frequently mentions fasting as something that you should do. He specifically says it for its health benefits, but he also says it for the mental benefits. I think we've both received some great mental benefits, maybe some health benefits on the back end. I have no way to quantify that.
None.
But it's always worth a try. I think that's the bigger point here is are you looking to challenge yourself? Maybe fasting's a good way for you to do that. Are you looking to strengthen your relationship with God if you already have one? Maybe fasting is a way you can do that. It's a way that you can put yourself through something that is difficult that will create a greater dependence on God.
Matthew, I want to read this really quickly. Matthew 16:14. It says, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. There is an act of denial during a fast of me denying the pleasures. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've gained through all this as we kind of close this out is I enjoy food. There's a pleasure that comes with food.
Of course.
There's a freedom that comes with food. There's also been a notion of gratitude I've learned through this too. The fact that I have a refrigerator, that I have a pantry full of food.
That's been a huge outcome. I'm glad you brought that up here at the end.
Any point in time that I want to eat something, I have access to it right there and now. And that not everybody in this world has access to that. In fact, up until 5 minutes ago, people didn't have, and many people around the world don't have refrigerators, but until 5 minutes ago in this country, there wasn't 5 refrigerators where people had access just to have a day's worth of food at any point in time that I have access to. And there's just a gratitude that I have gained from this time as well.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad you brought that up. That's such a great point. Anything else to say here as we round this thing up, buddy?
It's going to become an annual part of my life. I'm going to do this at least once a year.
I'll join you.
I think this time of year is the time of year I like doing it this time. I think there was a lot of benefit that came up to at this point in time of recognizing Jesus going to die for us and just being able to lay down for 3 days and just draw near to him. Like we said, there hasn't been any major revelations in my life, but going forward, will there be? Maybe.
I think no matter what, it's worth at least giving it a shot. It's the intention.
Yeah.
Man, it's the intention that you take towards God that he rewards every time. I think that's why he's saying don't go about acting like a fool in front of everybody else and complaining about being on a fast. Keep it to yourself. I think there's something special when we do that.
Yeah.
When you make just a sacrifice to God in his name for his purpose, I think he rewards that one way or another. I just feel like that's the inner strength to continuing to do it.
I agree.
So guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you feel inspired, join us next year, I guess, on this right before Easter. We did it Wednesday night, and we do it through 2 nights. So through Saturday evening, we did it 6 to 6. So thank you, anybody, for joining us. Thanks again to Dave and to
Tim and Nolan and Darren.
Tim and Nolan and Darren. That's right. And they're awesome. Appreciate you guys doing this with us. Thanks to you, Andy, for doing it too, man.
Yeah.
It made it a lot easier having some buddies doing it,
yeah.
Getting together with that. So thanks again. If you like the show, comment, please give us a thumbs up. If you're this far, for crying out loud, why haven't you done it already? Thank you so much for joining us. We are UPD. We just want to pray that you have a deep and a fulfilling relationship with Jesus and that he blesses you all the days of your life.
And all God's people said.
They said amen.
Sure did, brother. Have a good week, man. Enjoy your steak tonight, homie.
Thanks. Appreciate you, pal.
All right, bro.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.